Frontline is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
December 21st, 1988, Lockerbie, Scotland. Pan Am Flight 103 explodes midair, killing 270 people. Frontline investigates how a terrorist network built the bomb, then slipped through the fingers of the German police.
What they are facing is very sophisticated, covert networks, which are highly organized. They are almost paramilitary in nature. They are extremely difficult to penetrate.
Tonight, tracking the Pan Am bombers, a Frontline special report.
From the network of public television stations, a presentation of KCTS Seattle, WNET New York, WPBT Miami, WTVS Detroit, and WGBH Boston. This is Frontline, a special report with Judy Woodruff.
Good evening. The bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 last December was the most deadly terrorist attack ever against American civilians. More than 11 months later, it remains officially unsolved. Tonight, Frontline presents the results of its own investigation of the Pan Am bombing, the latest on what we know about who made the bomb, who ordered the attack, and what our government knew about the bombing before it happened. This special report was produced by William Cran and Stephanie Tepper. The investigative reporting was done by Scott Malone. The correspondent is David Marish.
December 21st, 1988, the night of the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. And long dark at 6:25 p.m. when 259 innocents aboard the Pan Am jumbo jet, the Clipper Maid of the Seas, took off from London's Heathrow Airport. The 16 crew members and 243 passengers, most of them headed home for Christmas, were at 31,000 feet just over the town of Lockerbie when at exactly 3 minutes after 7, a bomb shattered the plane's forward cargo hold. The plane broke into 5 sections, which came crashing down on the small Scottish town. "11 people on the ground died in the debris. The next day, soldiers and policemen saw death concentrated under broken roofs. And scattered across 845 square miles of Scottish countryside. And every detail of cloth or bone, of metal fragment or plastic shard, a potential clue. A clue to a horrible mass murder.
It has been established that 2 parts of the metal luggage pallet's framework show conclusive evidence of a detonating high explosive.
For the relatives of the American victims, many of whom had flown to Scotland just hours after learning of the tragedy, the investigators' announcement came as a double blow. Not only were their loved ones dead, they were the innocent victims of a deliberate terrorist attack.
And now that we know definitely that it was a bomb, we're going to make every effort we can to find out who was guilty of this savage and tragic thing and bring them to justice.
Seek hard and punish firmly, decisively those who did this, if you can ever find them.
Since then, the hunt for the guilty has been based in a requisitioned schoolhouse. The FBI is represented, which is fitting, since most of the lives lost were American. But this is an international investigation, and several Western intelligence services are taking part, as well as police from several nations. Now, police sources are indicating their investigation is virtually complete, and they're close to naming the suspects. Four months after he became president, George Bush promised a group of those who'd lost loved ones at Lockerbie that if the fingerprints of state-sponsored terrorism are tied into Pan Am Flight 103, he would retaliate as we did in Libya. In this special report, Frontline will present evidence known to the White House, evidence against the terrorists and against the states which have sponsored them. Based on secret documents that we've obtained, Frontline can reveal that 5 months before the Pan Am tragedy, the White House had inside information about Iranian plans to commit a major act of terrorism. So detailed was this intelligence that it included the precise date on which orders were to be passed from Tehran to a terrorist network in Western Europe. But months of intelligence reports and warnings, even arrests and interrogations of suspected terrorists, couldn't prevent an attack that had been consistently predicted.
1st December 88, DIA, Washington, secret. Although there have been no recent publicized threats, Tehran's general intent to conduct terrorist attacks against the U.S. continues. Periodic unconfirmed reports indicate that Middle Eastern terrorists may have been planning attacks on U.S. interests in West Germany.
That warning was issued just 20 days before the Pan Am bombing. At the Pentagon, one of those who plotted the arrest of the Achille Lauro terrorists was Noel Cook. Within days of the disaster, he was accusing the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command.
So the whole modus operandi that was reflected in this bombing seemed to point to the PFLP-GC.
The Lockerbie disaster reopened an old criminal file, the record of Hafez Qasim Dalkamoni of the PFLP-GC. Months earlier, Israel's counterterrorism advisor, Yigal Carmon, had warned West German security agencies about him.
To the best of our judgment, the PFLP-GC and the Dalkamoni gang in particular are involved in it in one way or another.
It's entirely dedicated to force. It has its own. It has a militia, and then it has a terrorist operation arm. As nearly as we can tell, pretty well trained, pretty competent, and their object is the destruction of Israel.
The PFLP-GC's 500 terrorists are based in Syria. Their leader is Ahmed Jibril. Jibril denies any involvement in the downing of Pan Am 103, but his previous record makes him a prime suspect. In February 1986, according to this Pentagon publication, Jibril threatened there will be no safety for any traveler on an Israeli or U.S. airliner. The threat was taken seriously.
Jibril's organization's operations were characterized from the early 70s by both their vicious and technically sophisticated nature, such as the repeated attempt to blow up civilian airlines by use of barometric timers.
February 21st, 1970, a bomb blew out the luggage hold of an Austrian Airlines plane flying to Tel Aviv. The crippled plane limped back to Frankfurt, and German authorities there arrested 2 members of the PFLP-GC. That same day, a Swiss airplane flying to Tel Aviv crashed after an explosion on board. 47 people died. The modus operandi pointed to Jibril.
We've seen him involved in this sort of activity in the past. We think as far back as 1970. And part of that is involved the use of a mule.
The use of innocent passengers, mostly young women, British, Dutch, Peruvian, to carry with them the explosives unknowingly into the plane and share the fate of all other passengers.
August 16th, 1972. These two young Palestinians befriended two English girls scheduled to fly to Tel Aviv on El Al. They asked the girls to carry a present to their family in Israel. The record player contained a bomb, which went off shortly after takeoff. The plane returned safely to Rome. Italian authorities said the bomb was made by Marwan Kresat, linked to the PFLP-GC.
Once you've developed an expertise in that kind of terrorism, that tends to be the kind of terrorism that you pursue.
In the endless factional fighting in Lebanon, Jibril's men have often clashed with Yasser Arafat's PLO. Jibril is an extreme rejectionist, demanding the military defeat of Israel, rejecting any negotiation.
Arafat kneeled to America and Israel by his policy. We are different, and we don't have the same ideas. We believe the road to Palestine is through armed struggle, and he will not get there through concessions.
Through the fall of 1988, the more Arafat talked peace and negotiation, the more U.S. intelligence agencies feared the worst from Jibril.
8th November 88, DIA, Washington, secret. Anti-Arafat Palestinians, specifically the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command, are opposed to these compromises and may launch terrorist operations if Arafat adopts them. Attacks against U.S. interests cannot be ruled out.
Like Jibril, Hafez Assad takes the hard line on Israel. For 20 years, Syria's president has been the main supporter of the PFLP General Command. Counterterrorism expert Neil Livingston.
I believe today that the PFLP-GC is a wholly owned subsidiary of Syria for all intents and purposes. And that means that the Syrians know every action that the PFLP-GC carries out.
A veteran of Israeli Army Special Operations, David Halevi is a journalist with wide-ranging sources in Western intelligence.
Ahmed Jibril was a captain in the Syrian army. He was involved in intelligence. He has very good relations with basically the three chiefs of the Syrian intelligence community, Ali Duba, Mohammad Khouli, and Razi Kanaan. He sees them on a weekly basis. He has briefings and debriefings, get instructions, get support, documentation, weapon, explosives. They offer him some training places. He has 2 training places north of Damascus, 1 south of Damascus. Nothing that this organization, that these people do, ever escapes the always watching eye of the Syrian intelligence services.
Jibril's other longtime sponsor, Libya's Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, is also an anti-Israeli rejectionist, often at odds with Arafat. But in 1986, following the American raid on Gaddafi's headquarters, the Libyan publicly disavowed terrorism and supported Arafat's strategy of diplomacy. Jibril balked, and he did so bluntly he offended Gaddafi, and thereby lost financial support that had run as high as $20 million a year.
He did a tour of the Middle East, of the other Arab countries, particularly in the Gulf, with his hat in his hand, looking for money, and everyone turned him down. He even went to the Iranians looking for money, and the Iranians turned him down.
Obviously, Ahmed Jibril was feeling the financial pressure. Jibril is shopping. He's shopping in Syria, shopping in Iraq, he's shopping with the Iranians, he's shopping with the Libyans. He's trying to make good. He's offering his services. He's saying, hey, I have an organization. Come and use me. I'm zum Haben. I'm available. Just pay my... And finally, the USS Vincent is shooting it down an Airbus, and an Iranian Airbus, and the Iranians are very much interested in shopping Ahmed Jibril.
On July 3, 1988, the USS Vincennes was on patrol in the Gulf of Hormuz. The ship's mission was to protect American merchant ships against possible attacks from Iran. Tension on the ship's bridge was at a peak this day when the Vincennes came under attack from Iranian gunboats. The Vincennes returned fire and sank too.
5 miles. Starboard turn.
Then the radar system spotted a plane. Under pressure, Vincennes crewmen misidentified the plane as a fighter bomber and miscalculated its flight path as an impending attack. As the plane flew closer, Captain Will Rogers fired surface-to-air missiles.
Oh, dead. We had him, got it. That was a dead on. Relax. Keep the noise down. Back it up.
But the crew's jubilation quickly turned to horror. They had shot down a civilian airliner, an Iranian Airbus with 290 passengers on board. 290 bodies, many of them pulled from the Persian Gulf in fishing nets. "66 of the dead were children. In Tehran, angry crowds demanded revenge, and a divided leadership tried to accommodate them. For the pragmatists, threatening words might have been enough, but the hardliners wanted to strike back at America.
This was too good to be true for Jibril. He got back on the phone again and called everyone he knew in the Iranian structure and said, for a price, I can deliver you vengeance. And this time, by contrast to the previous time when he had sought money from the Iranians, they said, send someone to Tehran, send a trusted aide, we're interested.
Who did he send?
He sent a fellow named Dalkamuni.
According to intelligence sources, within a week of the downing of the Airbus, Hafez Qasim Dalkamoni arrived in Tehran.
We know, and the intelligence services know, that Dalkamoni is traveling to Tehran, that certain people are coming back and forth, that there's a certain connection established with the Iranians, which Ahmed Jibril beforehand did not have.
Dalkamoni was well known to Western intelligence. His terrorist career goes back at least 20 years. In 1969, Dalkamoni and 5 colleagues had floated across the Jordan River into Israel. Their aim was to blow up power lines in Galilee, but something went wrong.
The terrorists came here at night and planted a demolition charge underneath the legs of the pylon. The charges exploded. The pylon shook but swung back into place. In other words, the damage was slight. The security forces arrived in the morning and found a badly wounded terrorist lying on the ground. He was shouting, "Vengeance, vengeance." His leg was badly injured. They quickly picked him up and took him to hospital for treatment.
Dalcomone lost a leg in that explosion and was given 2 life sentences. In Escalon prison, Dalcomone became a leader among Palestinian prisoners and a committed Muslim. In 1979, he was freed in a prisoner exchange. Dalcomone immediately rejoined Jibril's terrorist gang.
Returned to Lebanon, moved very quickly, reached to the top echelon of PFLP General Command, became responsible for their international section.
He seems to me an exact replica of his master and commander Jibril. Dalcomone is a commander on the operational level only, as one of the heads of what they call the Western Sector, which in fact is a international terrorist apparatus.
Dalcomone based his terrorist apparatus in West Germany. He began building up his network in the early 1980s. He chose Frankfurt as one of the key centers for his operations. A street called Sandweg runs right through the heart of the city's Arab quarter. The community of Middle Eastern guest workers provided perfect cover for Dalcomone. Here on Sandweg in Frankfurt, Hafiz Dalcomone kept his base camp. Weapons and explosives were found here. Operatives used this place as a safe house, and significantly, the keys to the apartment on the second floor of number 28 Sandweg were kept in Beirut, where the PFLP-GC International Division had its headquarters. European police and intelligence agencies had a hard time penetrating this network with safe houses in Yugoslavia, Spain, Sweden, Cyprus, and Malta. Former FBI counterterrorism expert Carter Cornick.
What they are facing is very sophisticated, covert networks, which are highly organized. They are almost paramilitary in nature. They are extremely difficult to penetrate through normal investigative channels, particularly through informant channels. They are cellular in nature, and they're an extremely difficult foe. They really are.
So in 1988, when Dalcomone went to Iran, he could offer the hardliners there a well-established terrorist network.
We know that Dalcomone was in Tehran at a certain given date. We know that there is a meeting at the Iranian Interior Ministry. We know it from intercepts. We know it from some human intelligence.
According to foreign intelligence, Dalcomone met with Interior Minister Ali Akbar Mohtashami. Mohtashami apparently paid him more than $1 million in front money to avenge the Airbus. At precisely the same time, U.S. intelligence reported a go-active order for an operation in Europe.
Terrorist groups already in place and well-financed would conduct the attacks. The order to the groups to proceed is to arrive in Europe by the evening of 7th July.
Sometime in September 1988, Dalcomone slipped back into Germany. But his luck had run out. The Israelis had penetrated his network and had tipped off the Germans. Uniformed police and undercover officers began to keep a close watch on that apartment on Sandweg in Frankfurt. Their patience paid off. Among those spotted by police surveillance cameras coming and going from the apartment was none other than Hafiz Qasim Dalcomone. The Israelis identified him to the Germans as a senior member of the PFLP-GC. By the third week of October, the BFV, the West German Domestic Intelligence Service, had stepped up its surveillance. The German operation picked up steam and a romantic code name, Herbstlaub, Operation Autumn Leaves. Frontline has obtained copies of some of the Autumn Leaves logbooks. They show that teams of watchers were working in at least 5 German cities. Phones were being bugged, names collected. One of the earliest entries notes the arrival in Dusseldorf of a middle-aged man. He was followed to an apartment in the suburb of Neuss. The apartment belonged to Dalcomoni's brother-in-law. The man's name was Marwan Kresat. He'd come from Jordan and brought with him a critical skill. Marwan Kresat makes bombs. U.S. intelligence saw a growing danger.
Terrorist threats against U.S. interests from Palestinian groups may increase in November.
What might have set off these intelligence alarms? Kresat's and Dalcomoni's shopping trips. Together, they bought batteries and switches at the Kaufhalle department store. At Huma, they bought clocks, both mechanical and digital. More troubling hints came in over those tapped telephones. October 19th, Dalcomoni calls a man called Abed in Damascus. Everything will be ready in a few days, he says. In the same conversation, the bombsmith, Kresat, speaks in an ominous code. I've changed the medication, he says, made it better and stronger than before. On the 23rd, Dalcomoni gets a call from Damascus. Abu Hassan says, things are almost ready and I'll see you on Friday. In the operation log, officials note things may be getting beyond their control. A decision is made to move in. October 26th, the police sweep extends across 6 states of West Germany. A dozen apartments are hit. At least 17 people are arrested, all but 2 of them Palestinian. At the apartment at number 28 Sandweg, police hit pay dirt. Inside the small apartment, they find a small arsenal. There are automatic rifles, mortars, rifle grenades, and an anti-tank gun. There are also 14 blocks of dynamite, 6 strips of TNT, and most frightening of all, 5 kilos of Semtex, the Czech-made plastic explosive that is the weapon of choice among aircraft bomb makers.
The amount of explosive devices and the equipment that was found in the possession of Dalcomoni and his cohorts bears witness to the bloodbath they were about to execute in Europe had they not been arrested.
It was police in that Dusseldorf suburb of Neuss who scored the biggest arrests of the day. They nailed the terrorist ringleader and his bomb maker. Marwan Kresat had just hung up this telephone and was walking down Hafenstrasse to a green Ford Taunus car where Dalcomoni was waiting for him when police moved in for the kill. It was in that car that police found the crucial evidence against Dalcomoni, the proof of how close his gang was to striking. These photographs, taken by agents of BKA, West Germany's version of the FBI, show what they found. A Toshiba radio cassette recorder, a shell of a recorder, really. Its innards contained a bomb, and triggering that bomb, a timer activated by barometric pressure, the signature of a device meant to bring down an aircraft in flight. From documents and passports seized in the raids, German police believed they had discovered the terrorists' intended target, Iberia Airlines Flight 888.
They believed that they stopped an operation that was aimed against Israel. The target was supposedly a charter flight from Madrid back to Tel Aviv with a lot of Israeli tourists, or an Israeli sport delegation who came to visit West Germany.
Intelligence about the big raids was being read at the highest levels of the U.S. government. This one was copied direct to George Shultz, then Secretary of State.
Top secret. Other terrorist operations may also have been in the works under the direction of one of the suspects, a PFLP-GC Central Committee member who traveled under a false name on a Syrian official passport and took orders from the group's headquarters in Damascus.
Here is where the Dalkamoni Trail ends. Ahmed Jibril's one-time European spy master remains in this German prison, awaiting trial, enduring hours of interrogations by police and intelligence agents. But today's concern is no longer with this man in jail. Today's concern is with the dozen or more men a German court ordered released within a week of their arrest. Today, German police admit those releases were a terrible mistake. How terrible they began to realize last December 21st, and knew even more painfully when Hafez Qasim Dalkamoni began to talk. One of the stars of Dalkamoni's confession is this man, his face reconstructed by German police artists from eyewitness descriptions. He called himself Ramzi Diab. He was arrested in the October sweep and released one day later without being fingerprinted or photographed. Before his arrest, Diab shared an apartment with Angelica Berner. 7 months later, police surprised her by dusting that apartment for fingerprints. She said they seemed disappointed that Diab's prints were long gone.
The police told us that Ramzi was obviously an important person in the organization because he could carry out this type of military operation.
This is Goetheplatz in Frankfurt. Angelica says the police showed her surveillance pictures of Ramzi Diab meeting Dalkamoni here. In one of those police pictures, a small case is seen sitting on the park bench.
There is one picture from observing where is Dalkamoni and Ramzi on it, and a suitcase, and the big army that there is maybe the material inside.
The bomb material?
Bomb material, yes.
Inside the suitcase?
Mm-hmm.
When questioned by police, Diab was confronted with the pictures of him and Dalkamoni. But he said he didn't know Dalkamoni. He just bumped into him at a hamburger stand. That story was accepted by police, and Diab was released. Police later told Angelica they were sorry they'd let him go.
I see. Well, they think maybe he transported the material to build this bomb.
The day after he was released, Diab caught the train for Vienna. The German police failed to notice he was using a stolen passport and a false name. Ramzi Diab is really Salah Salman Fiaz Quakes, and he is a senior operative in the PFLP-GC. In his confession, Dalkamoni names Marwan Krisat. When police interrogated Krisat, he cooperated. He spoke in detail about the leadership of the PFLP-GC, describing individuals and their roles. Within 3 or 4 days of his arrest, Krisat was allowed to make a telephone call to what one of the policemen present understood to be Jordanian intelligence. When Krisat made the call, he was told, in effect, matters would be taken care of. And within a few days, Krisat was indeed let go. His conduct in jail and that telephone call convinced some people Krisat was really a double agent. The man who set up the CIA's counterterrorism center is David Whipple.
I believe that the German authorities were effective in recruiting a man who was interested in guaranteeing his own safety later on. If he was the bomb maker, in fact, and if he played with the German services as an informant, whatever action was taken against the terrorists, it would go easier on him. And that would be his motivation for cooperating with the German authorities before the action took place.
Evidence that Kresat may have been playing a double game was found in this shopping center in Neuss. That bomb, the one he'd been caught with here in Neuss in Dalcomoni's car, wasn't the only bomb he'd built here in Germany. Frontline has learned that it wasn't until March 1989, 3 months after the Lockerbie tragedy, that the CIA found out about Kresat's output and notified the West Germans. Weeks after that, German police returned to this grocery and found 3 more bombs. The shop was owned by Hashem Abbasi, a relative of Dalcomoni. Abbasi, who was briefly detained himself, has been questioned in connection with the Lockerbie inquiry. Recently filmed by a concealed camera, he claimed he knew nothing about the bombs.
Dalcomoni is my brother-in-law. That's why he was staying with me. I had no idea about the bomb. It's a scandal the police didn't find it. My small son used to play with it. No, I didn't know Dalcomoni belonged to the PFLP-GC. I don't get involved in politics. I just run this shop.
Two of the bombs were hidden in radio cassette players, one in a computer monitor. Police drove them down the Autobahn to the headquarters of the BKA, the German FBI, in Wiesbaden. Here they found that, like the bomb found in Dalcomoni's car, all 3 had barometric triggers designed for use against aircraft. That accounts for 4 bombs, but intelligence sources believe Kresat built 5 or 6, one of which may well have been the killer bomb of Lockerbie. These sources now believe Marwan Kresat wasn't just a double agent, he was a double crosser.
If you're working with an intelligence source who is a penetration of a terrorist group, and that man gives you wrong information, throws you off the scent, then you're very vulnerable to criticism for having helped a person who actually perpetrated a terrorist act against something else. And then you've been misled, and you're more than a little embarrassed. You're horrified.
Kresat's release was brought to George Schultz's personal attention.
Top secret. West German authorities have released 10 of the suspects for lack of evidence. A PFLP-GC spokesman yesterday denied that the PFLP-GC has ever committed any terrorist act in any foreign country.
The PFLP-GC spokesman lied, and no one knows it better than the police in Stockholm. Here, a 35-year-old Palestinian has spent this month on trial. It was in this courthouse that police revealed what they know about him. Ask them and they'll refer you to the long criminal record of Mohammed Abu Talib, the head of the PFLP-GC's terrorist cell here in Sweden, has been under constant investigation in stabbings, bombings, and trafficking in illegal passports. And one of the men who was recently tried in these law courts with him was actually picked up by German police during their Operation Autumn Leaves surveillance. Abu Talib himself narrowly escaped detection by the West Germans. Abu Talib came to Sweden at least 4 years ago, settling in to the university town of Uppsala. With his wife Jamila and son Samir, they seem to be just another family of guest workers from the Middle East. But Abu Talib's real work was terrorism. The man who lived quietly in this suburban home was trained by radical Palestinians and in the Soviet Union. In Uppsala, he began building a terrorist cell Swedish police have charged Taub's cell was responsible for a series of bombings in Sweden and Denmark. In May this year, police raided a home in Uppsala, and Abu Taub soon found himself in the middle of a police lineup. When he was arrested, he was found with at least 4 false passports, one of them apparently hurriedly half-burned. After Abu Taub's arrest in Uppsala, he was brought here to Stockholm and placed under heavy security, while police in at least 3 nations investigated reports that he had smuggled out of West Germany one of Marwan Kresat's undiscovered bombs. Travel documents found during his arrest indicate Abu Taub was on the island of Cyprus at exactly the same time as Hafez Dalkamoni, and the suggestion is strong that the 2 terrorist chieftains met there then. The island of Cyprus, close to Beirut, is a convenient staging post for Middle Eastern operatives. Just this weekend, Frontline has learned that PLO officials who have been conducting their own investigation of the Pan Am bombing believe that Cyprus was a key location in the planning and execution of the attack. From Cyprus, Abu Taub flew on to Malta. Taub used his legal Swedish passport here, but police suspect he used his time to advance the Pan Am crime. This sun-bleached rock midway between Italy and Libya has long been a playground for spies and counter-spies. Maltese police believe Taub had a cell operating here. At least one other member of the Taub group from Sweden was spotted on Malta. Abu Taub told his wife he'd come to Malta on business, to buy some clothes, he said, and see some pals. At the end of the week, Abu Taub ended his Mediterranean sojourn and flew home to Stockholm. And the same day he was flying, German police were arresting Dalkamoni, Kresat, Diab, and a dozen other terrorist suspects. And the next week in Sweden, police picked up 2 of Taub's own gang, and Frontline has learned accused them of conspiracy, quote, to cause an air accident. The Swedish police arrests led nowhere. Like the Germans before them, the Swedes, too, had to release their suspects for lack of evidence. As the suspects were set free, at least one Kresat bomb was unaccounted for. By now, time was running out for Pan Am. And yet, right up until the last moment, warnings continued to circulate.
7th December 88, FAA number 22. An unidentified individual telephoned a U.S. diplomatic facility and stated that sometime in the next 2 weeks there would be a bombing attempt against a Pan American aircraft flying from Frankfurt to the United States.
The caller said that one of the passengers, a Finnish woman, would be duped into carrying a bomb on board the plane. Investigators concluded the call was a hoax, but the warning was still in force the day passengers checked onto the fatal flight.
'7th December 88. Possible testing of U.S. carrier security procedures. Individuals claiming phony law enforcement status sought information on procedures for transporting pistols, explosives, and detonators.
By now, Pan Am security had been briefed about the radio cassette bombs. In London, the British had even built a replica as they tried to figure out how best to detect it. Somehow, the suitcase with the bomb would find its way onto the flight to New York. Scottish police are sure the bag was interlined, that it arrived by plane in Frankfurt. From the damage it was to cause, police conclude this was the largest bomb Marwan Kresat made.
December 88, FAA number 22. Terrorist groups continue to target civil aviation, at times with the use of sophisticated improvised explosive devices that may be very difficult to detect during screening. Unwitting couriers have been used in the past.
Recently, Pan Am has claimed that the CIA received one last credible warning only 24 hours before takeoff, but suppressed it to protect an alleged drug investigation. The warning was never passed on to the airline. And Pan Am has also claimed that the CIA and Germany's BKA spotted suspicious activity in the baggage handling area 90 minutes before takeoff. The CIA and BKA both deny the charges, but even if they were true, it was already too late. In Lockerbie, the police have endured a painstaking and often painful task, sifting through the 250,000 items and personal belongings that were recovered from the crash. Now, months of patient work have begun to pay off. Police have found fragments of the radio cassette bomb and the suitcase that contained it. They have also recovered scraps of clothing seared by the bomb's blast. These were the clues that led police from Scotland to Malta. Here, the trail has led them to a small factory called Yorkie Clothing Industries. Its general manager is Victor Kaleja. When the Scottish police came, what did they show you?
They showed me a lot of pieces of material, blown up from a pair of trousers and torn and burned and everything.
Were you able to identify them as your product?
At a glance, no, but then when I looked deeper into them, there was one of the pieces which had my label on it. Yorkie Clothing label, like, you know? And of course, if that's the label on it, it had to be mine.
The clothes were sold in a shop in the tourist town of Slima. Today, the shop owner is under police protection, but he says he told police he remembered selling clothes to a young Arab in November of 1988. We now know that these clothes were packed into the suitcase, wrapped around the bomb that destroyed Pan Am Flight 103. Was the bomb sent to Frankfurt from Malta? We don't know. Was the murderous package put on board Pan Am 103 at this airport? That too is still a mystery. Or did the fatal breach of security occur at London's Heathrow? All of these are still unanswered questions. But the physical evidence gathered at the crash scene, the nature of the bomb itself, and the tactic of targeting innocent passengers on board a civilian airliner all bear the imprint of Ahmed Jibril and his PFLP-GC, and all served the interests of his known sponsors, the governments of Syria and Iran.
Within days of the downing of Pan Am 103, there was a flurry of communications between Tehran and some of its embassies and outposts, if you will. And the United States plucks these out of the air through our electronic interception methods. And one of the intercepts that the United States was able to put its hands on was a conversation between Monteshimi in Tehran and the Iranian ambassador in Beirut, saying, "Congratulations on a job well done, give them the rest of the money."
Some funds are mentioned, and there is a transaction of money that follows a couple of days later that originates in Europe and is doing a lot of traveling through European banks, finally reaches Beirut. From Beirut is transmitted to Cyprus, and from Cyprus to Damascus, and disappears in Damascus.
Jibril's home base.
Yes.
There's no question of the PFLP-GC involvement in this. There's no question of Syrian involvement in this. You're not going to do anything about any of these things. If you're going to continue to find ways to look the other way, and you have this canny little president over there in Damascus who I'm sure goes to bed every night wondering, my God, are there no limits? You know, I mean, I wonder how much I really can get away with.
Well, I've been told by people high position in our government that by sometime in February that the Bush administration had all of the relevant details and was 98% sure of who did it, why, what the motivation was, and how it all took place.
When you take retaliation in a large scale, you may satisfy your general public in the United States for a short period of time, and sympathizing countries will applaud. But in the long run, you kill people. You kill innocent civilians. You kill children. You kill women who have nothing to do with terrorism. That is axiomatic when you bomb a place.
You can fight terrorism only if you hype the price and you make it clear to the government and the countries who sponsor it, to the intelligence and secret services who initiate it, and to the terrorists themselves, that the price for every operation is something they cannot stand. They cannot bear, they cannot stand, they can't afford.
The Israelis are the most effective retaliators against terrorism. They are able to identify and take effective action, and they do regularly. An eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth is something that they adhere to and they practice. But I put it to any person who's interested in a question of that sort, how effective really has their ability to retaliate effectively? How effective has that been in reducing terrorist threats against Israel or reducing terrorist actions against Israel?
The Bush administration has approached this in an effort to minimize the need for political action. They have seen this, they have viewed this as a legal problem, and they have gone about this in a very methodical manner to try to collect evidence so that they can bring prosecution against someone in the future, which is a fool's errand. Because we're never going to get Jibril, and we're never going to get those people in the Iranian and Syrian governments that contributed to this. We'll probably never even get most of Jibril's senior operatives.
On the 21st day of every month, a group of mothers meets outside a Pan Am building in New York City. There they read out the long list of those who fell from the skies over Lockerbie. Husbands and wives, fathers and mothers, sons and daughters. Each name is a cry for justice.
Scott Christopher Saunders, 21. Jean Acton Murray, 82. Ira Chanel Sacabo, 38.
Maurice Peter Henry, 63.
Theodora Gina Cohen, 20. Eric Michael Coker, 20. Jason Michael Coker, 20.
Bert Wilson Carlson, 50.
Nicola Jane Hall, 23.
Robert Van Houten Jack, 57. Joanne Flanagan, 10.
Anthony Lacey Hawkins, 57.
Shannon Davis.
Last week, the families of the Pan Am victims wrote to Mikhail Gorbachev and President Bush. They asked the two leaders to address the problem of terrorism during the upcoming Malta summit and to punish both Iran and Syria for their support of the PFLP-GC. Today, the State Department told a representative of the families that state-sponsored terrorism is on the agenda for Malta and that the president has been briefed. Meanwhile, it has been reported that several months ago, the U.S. government confronted Syrian President Assad with evidence of Ahmed Jibril's role in the Pan Am tragedy and asked Syria to evict the PFLP-GC. So far, Assad has done nothing, and Jibril continues to operate from his bases in Syria. For Frontline, I'm Judy Woodruff. Good night.
Frontline is produced for the Documentary Consortium by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. Frontline is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
This is PBS. This term, the Supreme Court will decide the fate of Nancy Cruzan, who exists in what doctors call a persistent vegetative state. Her family wants to withdraw her feeding tube. The hospital says that would mean starving her to death.
Our decision was based on what we felt like that Nancy would want.
Frontline joins Fred Friendly and the Media and Society seminars to consider, does Nancy Cruzan have the right to die?